Hello, I'm Joerg. I'm the director of the Wendland-Cook Program in Religion and Justice at Vanderbilt Divinity School. We work on issues of religion and justice, obviously, but with a focus on economic and ecological justice issues. And we're especially interested in questions of labor, working people, the 99% majority that has to work for a living, and of course, how that all relates to religion, faith, and so on. I'm here today with Francisco García, who is a PhD student in theology at Vanderbilt University. He's also a graduate research assistant in the Wendland-Cook Program, and he is on the staff as a priest at the Episcopal Chapel of St. Augustine's here in Nashville. Great to be with you, Francisco, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Joerg. And as you mentioned, we're quickly approaching Labor Day, which is about a month away on Monday, September 5th. And we thought it would be a good time to begin to engage in this conversation about the intersections of religion and labor. So we will be having brief conversations with some of our colleagues and allies in this work of religion and labor, bridging these connections and working towards a broader justice. But we're going to kick it off here and just begin to ask the question, what is, why religion and labor? What excites us about this convergence? And then what might need to be done to continue to, build broader solidarity and justice in our communities and, locally, regionally, globally. So I think I'll pose the question first to you, Joerg. What is exciting you right now about this world of religion and labor?
I guess the first thing, and thanks for that question, Francisco, the first thing is really that religion is getting interested in labor again, because for a long time it seemed to be religion wasn't interested in all kinds of things, sometimes otherworldly, sometimes worldly. Religion over time learned that politics was important. That's a great lesson. But only now, I think, are we getting to a point where religion is understanding that labor is also important and something that occupies most of us, most of our days, most of our time that we're awake. So becoming aware of this, I guess the pandemic helped. We were talking about essential labors. We were beginning to understand that actually we could not survive without certain working people, certain groups of working people. And that certainly helped raise the value of labor, but it also helped us understand some of the problems, that there's a lot of exploitation going on, that labor is a place where democracy almost seems to be non-existent. We pride ourselves be living in a democratic country. And here in our labor situations at work, it's oftentimes as if democracy were absent. So what excites me is that there's an awakening, as it were, working people becoming aware of the importance of what they're doing. And, they're also realizing that they need to have a voice. This is not just about work and money. This is really about work, having a voice, being creative, being an agent, doing something and being valued for that. The fact that that has to do with religion, I think it's pretty obvious if you look at images of God in the biblical traditions, where God is oftentimes portrayed as a working person. We have this in Christianity, but of course, you also have it in the Jewish traditions. You have it in Islam, where God is portrayed as a worker who makes the world, makes Adam out of clay, plants a garden. Lots of these images in our traditions, and so I'm excited that these things are finally coming together and that we're facing a movement. So let me put this back to you, Francisco, because you have a long background in religion and labor issues yourself. What is it that excites you these days?
Yeah, what's exciting me right now is, well, first of all, like you mentioned, that these conversations are happening with increasing, just at an increasing level, and being also an organizer, I get excited by how these conversations are shaping up in different organizing contexts, and where There are real partnerships that are brewing between organizers and faith leaders and other, people on the ground thinking about how to do this work together. And so one example of that is here in Tennessee, this statewide coalition that is called Tennessee for All, that as Wendland-Cook, we've been accompanying and been part of the conversations from the very beginning about how we can reshape the economic and political conditions in the state, but that in a way that is driven by working people, where the agenda is driven by working people. But in order to do that, we have determined that religion is really an essential component of that. Given the way that Christianity has been, and I'll say, it might be a strong word to some, but co-opted really by fundamentalist political forces. Things are beginning to shift where we are pushing a different conversation to say, what does religion have to say about the conditions of labor, and what might laboring people and their faith have to do with a more just economy? And so I'm excited by this whole convergence, and that we're a part of it.
That's really great. And I'm really appreciative of all the work that you've done in leading these various movements. This brings us to our second point. So we're excited about what's happening. We're involved in what's going on, but what still needs to be done, I guess, is the second question. And you've already talked about some things that are being done, but what would you like to add? What still needs to be done?
I think what still needs to be done is at the average congregational level, this conversation about religion and labor is still not happening, I think, the way that it should, if at all, right? Maybe in a handful of congregations, this might be the case, where people are actively talking about, for example, how, as a person who sits in the pew that is part of a worshiping community, how does my identity as a working person, what does it have to do with my faith? And how might my faith community respond to these issues of economic and labor justice in a way that integrates this conversation in a really deep and meaningful and concrete way? So my hope is that we can continue to help provide tools, resources, and organizing support for those kinds of conversations to happen that'll move us to further collective action for the good.
That would be great. And this is part what we're trying to do through the Wendland-Cook program. You're involved in this as well. We're calling it the solidarity circles that bring together, on the one hand, specific projects in the solidarity economy, and on the other hand, life congregations, leaders, faith communities. And as we put the two together, we're deeply convinced that this will actually help transform both sides. Labor, working people, working communities stands to gain something. And of course, faith communities also stand to gain something. A minute ago, I talked about economic democracy. And we're believing here at the Wendland-Cook program that economic democracy is important to support political democracy. You cannot have one without the other. But also religious democracy. So the way religious life shapes up, the way we practice our faith, also can be influenced and shaped by some of these more democratic relationships. So what we're working on, and what I also would agree still needs to be done, is to bring these things back home for those of us who are members of faith communities, not as simply another social project for people who want to add something to their portfolio, as it were, but really as something that has to do with our identity, as you were just saying, right? It has to do with our identity of people, as people of faith. what I'm realizing as a theologian, this is maybe a heavy point here at the end, is, one of our colleagues years ago, Paul Tilly, famous theologian, talked about religion as the ultimate concern. By that, he meant it's a matter of life and death. Being and not being is at stake. And I've recently argued in a new book that's coming out soon that we can think about this as the question of productive and reproductive labor. That's part of our ultimate concern. That's an essential part of religion, because without productive and reproductive labor, nobody would be here. We would not be here without the gestational labor of our mothers, right? We would not be here without the labor of nature around us, bacteria included, even invisible parts. We would not be here without the essential workers that we just talked about a minute ago. So all of this comes together, not to say this is the only thing that matters, but it's something that has been overlooked for a long time. And so for us to bring it back and to work together with faith communities is what excites me. And I think this is work that's already happening. We'd love to have people join us in this. Check out the Wendland-Cook Program at religionandjustice.org on the internet, and stay in touch with us. And there's more to come. So thanks, Francisco, for your time. And we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.